Hello, friend. I want to tell you about the Nissan Note car, a Japanese that is more European than the brand suggests. Although it is far from perfect, it has its advantages. Unfortunately, its problem is very strong competition. Nissan Note engines. The car could have one of three engines to choose from: the 1.4 and 1.6 petrol units, as we have already mentioned, come from Japan. They should not be confused with Renault engines, which have similar parameters. The smaller one develops 88 horsepower, while the larger one 110 horsepower. Petrol engines are quite economical. 6.5 minus 7.0 L, 100 kilometers is the fuel consumption of 1.4, while 1.6 needs about a liter more. There is one advantage, that the 1.4 unit has over 1.6 better cooperation with gas installations. Renault's 1.5 DC diesels develop 68, 86, 90, or 103 horsepower. These are French designs, but with Japanese equipment, they are exceptionally economical. On the road, you can go below 5L, 100 kilometers, and the norm is an average consumption of 5 to 6L, 100 kilometers. Which engine to choose for the Nissan Note? Basically, the best choice is the 1.6 petrol. It not only has the power to provide good performance, but it is also the most refined. It is true that there are failures of the exhaust gas treatment system, EGR, the throttle valve, pollution, minor oil leaks or irregularities in engine control. But these are not things that are difficult to deal with. It has only one problem: its head does not like gas installations. The timing chain is responsible for the timing in both petrol units. It is not faulty, but in models with higher mileage, it is worth checking its tension or at least listening to its operation. Stretching also happens here, but it is not the biggest problem. The engine burns only slightly less fuel and offers significantly worse dynamics. The lack of power will be felt mainly on the road. It is also more troublesome. Oil leaks are almost certain. Coils, throttle valves, and sensors fail. The riskiest engines are 1.5 DCI diesels. The 68 horsepower version has one advantage. It is an extremely simple design without a dual-mass flywheel with cheap-to-repair accessories. The 86, 90 horsepower, and 103 horsepower versions will be slightly more expensive to repair. Particularly expensive repairs concern the dual-mass flywheel. Unfortunately, they also have a serious design defect, which is premature wear of the crankshaft bearings. But don't worry. What's more, the weakest engines are less likely to have problems in this area. The only preventive measure is to change the oil regularly every 10,000 kilometers. By following this recommendation, you will also extend the life of the turbocharger. What's wrong with the Nissan Note? Engines are not the biggest concern for Nissan Note owners. This is a car very similar to the French, relatively unreliable, but it's mostly the little things that break down. Overall, however, the car's durability is high. It also rarely breaks down on the road. The suspension system, thanks to its simple design, can be repaired cheaply, but it has to be done quite often. The suspension bushes, especially the front one, wear out quickly. Not only the wishbones, links, and stabilizer rubbers, but even the bushes that secure the subframe. The rear is definitely better. Most often it is the shock absorber elements that refuse to cooperate. The steering system is not very durable. In addition to the rod ends, the gearbox itself wears out quickly. It was initially replaced under warranty because it knocked and had play. The subframe mount was similar. Unfortunately, it is difficult to have a good opinion about the quality of a car's workmanship. You should not be surprised when the windscreen suddenly cracks or water starts leaking into the cabin, through the windscreen or the rear hatch. Knocking of the chassis is not always the chassis. Often the muffler is loose. Rust occurs on the boot lid, which does not always open due to a failure of the electrical harness, as well as on the doors and sills and the exhaust. Howling while driving is associated with worn wheel bearings. Sounds scary? Don't worry. Contrary to appearances, a car rarely needs to be towed to a mechanic, but it's worth having a friend in this industry who you can visit even a few times a year. Is it worth buying a Nissan Note? In our opinion, yes, but only if you find a really nice, well-maintained example. Unfortunately, the Note is burdened with quite frequent faults and problems that will not stop the car, but will be irritating. We recommend the petrol versions, especially the 1.6, but we do not advise against the diesel either. It is important to keep an eye on frequent oil changes. The Nissan Note is a bit bland, so we think it's worth buying, but it's not a model we recommend looking for. In our opinion, the Honda Jazz is better in almost every respect, and the Opel Meriva or the refined Ford Fusion are at least as good. The Note's competition is also the technical equivalent of Renault, the Grand Modus model, and we would also put it ahead of the Nissan. Thanks for listening to me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and rate my video. If you know of any problems with this car that I haven't mentioned, be sure to write about them in the comments.